All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Um, Today, we are going to be talking about the French and Indian War and basically the very beginnings of the American Revolution. All right, I have said it before, and I'll probably say it again later in this video. The French and Indian War is the first domino to be knocked over, which then concludes to the American Revolution. That is my personal opinion. I'm sure other people who are history nerds and some of that would say different. Some might agree. Again, it's my humble opinion. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So the objective today, we're going to analyze the effects of the French and Indian War. What happened with it? And then we're going to critique the actions of the Boston Tea Party and its effectiveness. And then we're going to develop a logical argument if raising taxes is the only way to raise money. All right, so here is your warm-up picture. Okay, the first question asks you, what do you see? Okay, so look at it, what's going on. Depending on what worksheet you got, your warm-up picture might look a lot different because that toner really just let out all that ink, so it's really hard to see the picture. So hopefully this picture you can see it. I hope you have a big computer screen or you tilt it to the side so you can see the whole thing. Um, so yeah, that's the first question. What's going on? The second question asks you because there's some Native Americans you can see, like right here and stuff like that. Some right here, up here. Um, what do you think the Native Americans are fighting for? Why do you think they're fighting these other people? Okay, so go ahead, answer those questions. Pause the video because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right, so here we go. The French and Indian War. The main reason the war started is because both sides, the French and the English, believed that the Ohio River Valley belonged to them. Okay, the French were like, well, the English, your border is the Appalachian Mountains. So from the Appalachian Mountains to the Mississippi River, that's ours. The English were like, no, 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 no. You guys, your stuff says that the Mississippi River is your border. So everything from that side to us, it belongs to us. So if you look at the map, that area where it's blue and red, the stripes, that's the area they're fighting for. Okay. Now, France and Britain, they've always hated each other. It just seems like it's been like that since the two countries were first formed. All right, they've always butted heads. Okay, but here's the thing: the difference between the two mainly is that the French really got along well with the natives. When the French came in through like the New Orleans area, Louisiana, um, they came in. They're like, oh well, we own this land, but y'all can stay here. Y'all cool, and maybe let's see if we could do some trading. You sell some furs, we'll give you some this, we'll give you some weapons, we'll give you what you need. So they had a better relationship than the English and the natives. Um, Not every single English person hated the Native Americans. That's not the case. But there was a lot of them that didn't get along with them. They saw them as like, well, we're trying to live our lives, and they keep interfering. We want to expand, but oh, gosh, they're always there, and they're in our way. So some English people saw them as a nuisance. Some English people saw them as, hey, this is, we're actually kind of invading their land a little bit. They're just gracious enough to, let us stay here. We're actually in their territory you know. So there is some sentiment, and the natives did get along with some English groups, and yet they didn't get along with some other ones. So the fighting starts, right? It lasted for 5 years here in the U.S. They continue fighting elsewhere around the world. Okay, in England and France, it became known as the 7 Years' War. I think it lasted actually like 9 years, and the total war because they didn't just fight in those two areas, the U.S. and in the France uh, English area. they fought everywhere else. And it lasted, I believe, like 29 years in total. So it was a big fight. Eventually, Britain would win. Okay. Spain actually even jumped in to kind of say, like, hey, it looks like the tide of war, the tide is changing here. So they try to jump in and go against England, but they lost too. Okay. So now we come to your first question. How do you think the relation between the Native Americans and the British will be after this French and Indian War? Now, again, like I told you, some Native people got along with English and they actually fought alongside them. Okay, some of them, not as much compared to the French side. The French had a lot of Native Americans helping them out, but the English did have some. So do you think that they'll be like, hey, these guys are pretty cool, they helped us out, or do you think they're gonna be like, you know, treating them like garbage and things like that, like, oh, we beat you, so you know, we're gonna take over your area, or things like that. Okay, write down your response, pause the video because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so with the war being over, Britain had a really, really big problem. Okay, war is not free. War costs a lot of money. War costs a lot of lives. But in this case, Britain was more worried about the money. Um, they had to take out loans. Okay, yes, governments borrow money. Okay, could they print out more money? Sure, but the value of their dollar is going to be worthless. Because again, back then, if you traded in, let's say, a stack of dollars like this, you would get some gold. If you printed out a bunch of money, like all this, you know, that gold, the value of the gold is going to go down, 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 down. So that one sheet, $1 is going to be basically worthless. So you can't print too much money. Um, and that was a problem. Britain needed money. Now the colonists, they wanted to expand. They're like, hey, yeah, we won. All right, so let's move into that territory. And the British were like, no, 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 you guys aren't going there. And the colonists were like, well, why not? Under the agreement, the Proclamation Act of 1763, they couldn't. All right, they basically made an agreement with the natives, like, hey, we won't invade your area, things like that. And if something happens, let's discuss this. So if all these colonists started moving out west a little bit more, that could cause a problem. And that's the thing, Britain did not want another war, because if they've had another war with the natives, they knew those natives would turn to the French, and then the French would back them up, and they could not afford another war. So here's the thing too. At the same time, the colonists were like, let's expand west. We want to expand west. The Royal Crown is figuring out that some of these colonists have been smuggling goods. Now, that might not seem like a problem, but the thing is, when they smuggle goods, they're not paying the taxes on those goods, in which that tax money would go to Britain. So Britain is losing money. And in a time when they really can't lose any money, they are. And they see, like, these colonists, they're wanting to reap the benefits of war, and yet they don't want to pay for the war itself. So this really ticked off the king and the English people. And so they were like, okay, well, we know how to get the money from those people. Let's do it. And you're going to see what it is right now. So when you go to a store and you buy something, you may already notice that when it says, like, oh, it's 99 cents, it's not really 99 cents, right? It's like $1.08, right? $1.09, something like that. Because there's taxes. That's what the British decided to do. They decided to add new acts, which is another word for taxes. These were directly added to the price of the items. So the first thing they taxed was sugar. Okay, they taxed sugar. Hey, the colonists need sugar for their tea and things like that and other stuff. The colonists then were like, we're good. We don't really need sugar from you guys. We can get it from elsewhere. We can get it from Spain, or we could just not use sugar at all. We're good. So then the British are like, okay. Okay, you guys want to play that game? The Stamp Act came up, which required a stamp to be placed on any printed material, legal papers, playing cards, books, whatever. Again, the colonists were like, okay, you want to do that? Fine. We won't use like playing cards from you guys, stuff like that. We won't buy any. We're fine with what we have. Um, and as for paper, you know what? We'll make our own. We have plenty of trees. We have machinery. We can make our own paper. We don't need you. So then England was like, okay, let's ante up a little bit. Let's bring it up. So then they brought out the Townshend Act, which placed a tax on stuff like glass, lead, paper, paint, tea. And on top of that, it allowed the custom officer, the guys who basically put the taxes on these items, who check the ports, make sure that, hey, okay, yeah, we got a crate of tea. They check that stuff off. Um, they gave them the power to arrest smugglers. Now, what's the equivalent of that today? That would be if you ever see those people walking, with the crosswalk, the stop sign, for kids or whoever walking the crosswalk. That would be like the cops or the government giving them the authority to arrest somebody. Okay, those people are just out there just doing the crosswalk. Make sure you stop so people can walk. But it'd be like them having the ability to arrest you, give you tickets, things like that. Okay, and just to double up, the British brought out the Intolerable Acts, which was several acts altogether. The Tea Act, the Quebec Act, the Coercive Act. Now, the colonies were getting really, really upset because they're like, well, we're getting all this taxes. Okay, I get you're upset about us not paying for the war or, putting our 2 cents in, but you don't know what our struggle is here. You think that we have gold on the street, that it's gold's falling out of our pockets. It's not. We don't have, really, really rich people here. Not everyone's filthy rich, you know. So you need to hear from someone like us. And there's nobody in England who's representing the colonies. So there's no one there going, hey, you know what? This winter was really bad for the colonists, so let's see if we can help them out. Or, hey, you know what? That tax is going to hurt a lot of poorer people. It might not hurt the rich people, which is there's some, but it's really going to hurt the poor. So let's aim something more towards the rich people and not really the poor people. There was nobody there to say that kind of stuff. There's no representation, and that's where the phrase "no taxation without representation" came from. We're paying this money, we should have somebody representing us when decisions are being made. So this is a little close up of that picture from the last slide. This is stuff that was going on. People were actually picketing and protesting all these taxes. So your next question is, why do you think no taxation without representation was such an effective saying? Why do you think people were shouting that and believing that deep down in their heart, into the very marrow of their bones? Why do you think so? Okay, so really think about it. Um, Pause the video, right? Give your response because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so now due to the anger of stuff like the Stamp Act and things like that, a group of revolutionary people, they were known as the Sons of Liberty. These guys, like Samuel Adams, there really was a guy named Samuel Adams, Paul Revere, Benedict Arnold, these guys used to meet in secret at pubs and bars, and they would be in the far corner talking about, hey, we need to break free from England. We need to, do this and that. Okay, but now with people being upset, they no longer had to hide in the shadows, hide in the corner whispering. They can now talk openly because people were angry and people were starting to believe what they believed. Okay. Now, the day before the Tea Act took effect, um, about 150 guys got on these boats. Okay. They got on the boat and they got the British tea and they dumped it overboard. This became known as the Boston Tea Party. Okay. They threw 342 crates of tea. Okay, now here's the thing. This is where it gets funny. Um, some people, have that because it's that one of those Mandela effect that these guys did in the middle of the night. Nobody was around, things like that. No, people were around. People saw. Okay, some of these guys actually dressed up as Indians. Not everyone did. Some of them. And it's like, you really expect me to believe that you are an Indian, that you're a native? No, you do not look like a native whatsoever. Um, but yeah, they people saw them. They dumped it. People were cheering, things like that. And because of that, the Coercive Act came in, which that basically meant that Boston, the city of Boston, had to pay for all that tea. And they were then banned from having town hall meetings. And on top of that, the British government put a new governor in charge. His name was General Thomas Gage. And to make matters worse, the king sent 2,000 more troops to Boston. Now, he sent those troops to kind of discourage people from doing anything else, like, oh my God, there's more cops here and things like that, more soldiers. So they were kind of hoping that that was the case, that it might stop people from like trying to do anything bad. But in reality, it had the opposite effect. These revolutionary people, the people in general, saw this as, oh, they're sending more soldiers. Oh, they want to fight. So it gave that illusion that they're preparing for war. They're preparing to, do things to hurt us. And in reality, it was just to scare them. But they took it as a personal shot. All right, so here's your next question. What are your thoughts on destroying property as a form of protest? Do you agree with it or disagree with it? Okay, think about it. Tell me, what do you believe? Okay, um, so again, put down your response, um, pause the video because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. And here's your exit ticket. Do you think the Revolutionary War was inevitable? Do you think it was going to happen? Either then or sometime afterwards? Or do you think that right now we would still be talking like the British people? We'd still be under England's rule. You know, we'd all have accents, things like that. Oh, cheerio, good chap. you know, tea and crumpets, anyone? No, no. Boily good time. Boily good time. You know, do you think we'd be like doing that right now, or do you think we would have gained our independence from England? Okay, so write down your response. Okay, don't forget the why or why not part. That's the key part. And once you're finished, you are done for this lesson. All right, so good job. You guys take care, you be safe, and I'll see you later, all right?